Hello, everybody. Thank you guys for joining. We get some people in here. Hello, hello. Got some new names as well. Welcome, 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 welcome. We'll probably get started here in the next couple minutes. Give people a few moments to kind of pile in. I got some stuff on the screen. My name is Robert. I'll probably add that to my little name profile here. But here to help you. So, like I said, we'll kind of get started here in maybe, I don't know, 3 minutes, something like that. Just to give folks a second to kind of pile in. If you know you got questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we can start putting some eyes on them in the meantime, and you'll get your question answered first. So that's always nice. But again, if you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the chat. Put them in the chat for me. And if not, we're just here to learn. That's fine too. Like I said, I see we're getting more and more people in here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll probably get started here in about I don't know, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, right around 12:03, 12:04 Eastern Standard Time. I just like to give people a moment to kind of pile in. If you do have a question and you know you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. You're here to listen. Yeah, great. Sick. No problem, man. Awesome. Cool. And like I said, we'll start here. I don't know, 60 seconds, a minute, something like that. 90 seconds at this point. Kind of just and we'll start here in just a minuto. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. Give it about 30 more seconds. Like I said, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. It'd be nice to kind of have some, or even if you're just like, hey, my organization works with a specific thing, I can maybe talk about some stuff in that realm. Otherwise, I'm just going to be kind of meandering through the world that is decisions. So again, if you just know, like, hey, I'd like to, learn about a specific thing, or even just a broad concept, like, oh, we mainly use it for rules. I can kind of show off some rule stuff, or anything like that. Just let me know. If not, I'm kind of going to do a high level overview. Done a million high level overviews, but I might kind of filter it down based on some previous questions. All right, we're at what, 12:04? I'm gonna start talking. Welcome. My name's Robert. I'm one of the trainers here. Just, again, I know that some of the people in here have heard this spiel 100 times, so I'll try and keep it quick. But on the top right, we have the YouTube channel and I know it's impossible to scan a QR code from your computer, but we have the YouTube channel on the top right that we post all of these videos as well as other content. And then on the bottom right, we have the Solutions Marketplace where we have kind of accelerators and built out solutions that you can add to your decisions instance to reduce your friction to deployment. Um, you know, it's a great option. So let's take a quick look at those two things, and then I'll get started showing off some stuff maybe based on questions from yesterday. So the first thing is the YouTube channel. Um, it looks something like this. Boom, looks something like this. And again, here's all lunch and learns, except for on days where, sometimes we might skip a day if we don't have any questions, because we don't want to put, 20 minutes of me just rambling on over and over and over again. But for the most part, it's every single day, Monday through Thursday. We also have content based around questions we get regularly. So stuff like dependencies, differences in data modeling, and the difference in the data structures. Uh, Project 9 conversion, things along those lines. And there's a repository of old information as well. We have, I don't know how many videos, I probably should know, but uh, at least 3 years worth of videos. So a lot of videos. When it comes to that Decision Solutions Marketplace, if you can't find it, feel free to Google it. You don't have the ability to scan a QR code on your computer, Decision Solution Marketplace, or if you just go to our website, it's under Marketplace right here, Resources Marketplace. So it's the same thing either way. And these are just, like I said, accelerators and things you can build out. Like if you know, hey, our organization is going to be using scorecards for some reason or shift management, it kind of comes with built-in processes so that you can reduce that friction to deployment and you can kind of see some structural stuff. Um, and again, that's under the website Marketplace. I know it's kind of loud in here. Apologies. The other place I will say it's a little bit outdated. It's from previous iterations of decisions, but it's still useful information if you're trying to build something complex. We have the example lab, which you can search for as well. Decisions example lab. And again, this is from older iterations of decision. So just be aware that it's not going to have the most modern functional stuff. It's from 2022 at the very latest. That's when it was updated. But again, if you're like, hey, I'm trying to figure out some form logic on how to do a specific active form flow, or I want to do a tree view, edit a list, you name it, we've got lots of build outs. And the cool thing is about this stuff is when you click on any of these, right? So you're saying, I want to, let's find one that's kind of niche. I want to toggle the language on a form from English to Spanish, right? If you click on that, sure, it tells you how to do it, but it also gives you a download so that you can import it into your decisions instance. And again, this was made on 6.13, so a little bit old. But you can import it into your decisions instance and look at how that stuff is built. So that's another great resource for you if you wanted to have that kind of toggle in Espanol at the bottom, and just gives you this file so that you can import it, see how it was built, and maybe reverse engineer it. And there's lots and lots of stuff here in this example lab. The last of my housekeeping things before I start kind of just talking about content is just a worthwhile thing is we're also always doing events here at Decision. So we have like one every other month, it seems like. So our next one is here in Virginia Beach in, a month from now. But we have one in September. We have one in November. So basically every other month we have these. These are free. We have two sessions, a foundations and a master class. They are free sessions. You got to find a place to sleep, and you got to get here. But once you get here, it is free, and we give you food and all that. So again, maybe talk with your organization. Hey, we're trying to implement more stuff. You can join the foundations class or the master class, and they're little 3-day boot camps. If you're on the other side of the world, we have one in Singapore. We just had one in Sweden. We've had them in Australia. We've had them all over the place. So we try and update this somewhat regularly, have at least one a month, but those are great for you. This is also where you'll see webinars. We have this webinar, AI Rule Engine Unlock Potential in Healthcare, but this was yesterday, so you missed it. But this is on. So say you missed it, and you're like, man, I work in healthcare and I want to improve decisions and patient outcomes. The great thing is, if you go back to YouTube and you type in decisions, you can find our regular channel. Decisions automation is probably the fastest way to find it. You can find our regular channel, and they post those videos. Again, that was yesterday, so it might not be live just yet, but they post all of the webinars. Here's the one from 2 weeks ago. I'm imagining that they'll post yesterday's here today at some point. So again, we have these larger webinars that are more niched down into use cases, but it's another just great resource. So that is 5 minutes of resources available to you if you're just here to learn. So we talked about that. We talked about this, talked about that, talked about this, talked about that. Let's do some kind of bouncing around. Let me just check to make sure the chat's not here. Okay, cool. So I'm going to kind of pick up on some stuff we talked about yesterday, just because I think it's worthwhile, and I already have partial build outs here. Yesterday, we had some questions about getting data and getting folders and forms from your local file system to decisions, or the inverse, getting file data that you have created in decisions into your local file system. So, and again, feel free to interrupt at any point in time if you want to redirect the conversation, because I am just kind of going full bull here. But we have this file directory demonstration. I've kind of made some of this stuff already. I'll start it fresh, but if you are looking to interface with your local machine in either to decisions or away from decisions, those steps are in file management. So I'll kind of just talk about file management steps. I don't know if I spelled that right. I hope I did. The question yesterday was based around building folders. We talked about, PowerShell options, and then someone in the chat said, hey, there's actually a file file management step for that? And we're like, oh, wow, there is. So we're learning here on our side of Lunch and Learn as well. I'm in version 9, so this is going to look a little different. I'll hide some of my stuff than yours if you're in 8. But generally speaking, a lot of those file management steps are still going to be here. So yesterday they were asking about how to make a directory. So there it is, create directory. And you can create a full file path here and it will create a folder for you. But what is more useful to me is maybe getting stuff into Decisions than getting it out. Um, you know, that's just my opinion. But we have stuff like load all files with an extension, right? So load all files, load all with an extension. So you can parse it down by, hey, I only want PDFs, or I only want CSVs, or I only want you name it. You can add the extension in there, but for now we're just going to do load all files. And what I'll do here is I will find a folder. I have a folder on my desktop called performance testing. I don't know if you have access to that, but I'm copying the path right now. Again, I don't know quite if you're able to see my desktop, but I'm copying the path of this folder that has a couple files in it. Couple files in it. So let's go back, pull this back up. Hopefully you can see my screen. And I can just copy that directory information in here as a constant. I got to get rid of these brackets, these quotation marks. And not that we're using this data just yet, but I'll just kind of show you. Again, when I load all files and I debug here, what am I doing here? What am I missing? Apologies. We should be outputting file data. C, Robert Grauer, desktop. Did I miss a bracket or something? Here, I'll run it. I know I've got a build out that already works, so apologies. Something like this. List files in directory, not load files. Apology. So yeah, I wanted to use that list files in directory. So for me, all the time, I make a lot of training materials in Decisions, like the videos and PowerPoints and you name it, as well as answering emails. So I take a ton of screenshots. My screenshot folder right now, as we speak, which is in the pictures folder, has, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got a ton of screenshots in it right now, just from taking screenshots over the last week or so, since, let's see, 7/29 was the last time I ran this flow. But what I'm able to do is list the files in directory, and it will output a list of the files as strings. And then from each step, I can delete that file and then send an email to myself saying, hey, like I said, this is a scheduled job. Hey, the following screenshots have been removed to your recycling bin at this time, and it lists them all out. So when I debug, and let's see if that thing loaded. Nope, still not yet. When I debug, right, it found all 27 of those files, or 26 of those files, and deleted it. So again, I did list files in directory, and it says, okay, here they all are in that folder, my picture screenshot folder. Here's all of them going back to 7/29. It then iterated through them and deleted 26 of those files. The reason why this says 27 is because it hits it one last time on the way out. So it hits it 26 times to iterate through, and then it checks there's no more, 27 on the way out. And then it sends me an email saying something along the lines of, hey, we deleted them here. So, and I sent it to myself from myself. But when I look at that folder now, or file, which I don't know if you can quite see, let's see if I can change that setting. Screen 2. Yeah, cool. I've got no more screenshots in there. It just deleted them for me. So I don't have to go through. And I know that's a small ask, but in terms of a small scalable thing that just saves you a couple minutes and keeps you organized, things like that. Some more file management stuff, we talked about it yesterday. And again, I just use that directory name for this. Some more file management stuff that's really cool and useful is creating files, moving files, things along those lines. So reading text files, touching a file, so you can kind of update the time in which it was used, append text. But the one that we talked about yesterday was create a directory. But I also have another one to watermark stuff. So let's say hypothetically, I had a folder called company information and I wanted to watermark them all. I can run this process. I'm not sure if I have anything in this folder anymore. I do. So I've got a couple things in that folder, which I load to here. So that folder has, see if I can find that stuff. It's on my desktop. I do know that. Company information, right? I've got these two files here. I can load them up, select which files I want to watermark. Say, hey, I want to watermark this. It'll show me a little preview of what that document looks like. Again, these are files that are on my desktop, on my local machine. I can check that and say, hey, I want to watermark this. And I think that I will error out here at the end because I've been messing with the end. But basically, the underlying concept is that we're adding using an add watermark to text step. We are converting it to file data so that we can get a URL. So we're adding a watermark to this text that just says confidential in big old ugly text. We'll see if it at least downloaded it. No, it did not. But I'm adding a watermark to the text, and then I'm converting this file data to a file reference so that I can get a URL. And on the end form session, I am opening that URL, which causes it to download to my machine. I'm then giving it a moment, pausing the flow for a couple seconds. Why am I pausing the flow? Just to give it time to download in case it's a large file. And this is maybe not the best practice, but just conceptually talking about this. And then I'm renaming it, saying, hey, take the original name and change it to confidential with the original name. So we're taking that file and we're renaming it to confidential, and then we're moving it to a new folder called moved company information. So it goes through, loads it up, watermarks the file, converts it to a file URL. We did an end form session so that we can download it. We open that URL. We then pause the flow for a moment so that we can rename it, and then pause it for a moment to make sure that rename goes through. 3 seconds this time, and then we are moving it to a new folder. So it's kind of an automated process. If you have a folder full of documents, you're like, hey, I just want to add watermarks to all of these, or I want to add, what are those things called at the top of a document? Letterhead, something along those lines. You can add a letterhead to things, as long as it's not a perfectly clean process with that, but watermarking is pretty clean. Then moving it. So it just moves all the things automatically for you and adds watermarks to them. And again, a lot of these steps with these paper clips, these are all found here under file management. So load all files with file extension. And notice here, this is one of those with the extension. I'm only loading files that have a PDF extension to them. So if I add a random back file in there or a random file that I can't watermark, like a movie, you're not gonna be able to watermark a movie. To kind of put in some built-in, I guess, error handling maybe, or just effective workflow management. If I accidentally put a movie in there, I don't want my flow to stop or to error out. So it's only loading PDFs because I know that I can watermark those. And again, that's load all files with extension rather than load all files. You can load and delete, you can load and rename. There's tons and tons and tons of options here for accessing files on your actual machine, as well as compression, which is mainly going to be like zipping and unzipping things. So if you wanted to create zips or unzip, gzip, add file to zip, that can be under the compression category of file management. So I think that's a worthwhile thing to talk about. I always talk about version 9 update, so I'm not going to do that today unless someone wants to know specifically. I can gladly talk about some of that stuff. But again, if you're also working on a server network based, you're going to be utilizing the network subcategory of file management. I have a local instance installed, so that's why I'm using these. But if you're working off of a server or some type of network version, you want to be able to utilize these steps, which are just slightly different. Actually, it'd be these steps right here, which are just going to be slightly different than your actual steps down here. But those are for files on a network, on a server, something along those lines. Cool. Talk about file management. I guess, let's see what we've built out for people. Error handling, that's another one, that maybe kind of gets brushed over. It's important, and it kind of relates back to that PDF extension I was talking about earlier. But on all of your steps in your flow, you want to be able to set it up so your automation requires the least amount of manual anything. It's kind of the purpose of automating something um, is to remove processes that will require management or manual fixes. On almost all steps, if you go to like this is just a show pop-up step. So if I run this pop-up, um, it's just going to give me a pop-up window over here saying, hey, here's today's date and time. Why is it today's date and time? Um, because that's what I chose to show pop up the flow data start time. But on all these steps, on almost every step in decisions, you can add an outcome path for an exception and do certain things, right? So say this fails out for whatever reason, or you have an API call that fails out for whatever reason, you could send an email saying, hey, to an administrator, admin@yourcompany.com, saying, hey, something is broken. And we have that a lot on our internal systems of like, hey, a container went down or server's not operating right. But you can add, various checks. You can iterate through and say for each, do a certain thing, give it a certain, let's say for each count, I think is an option. Is it count for each? Hmm. But you can iterate through things and say, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. But another option is this catch exception step. So you'll notice that the direction of this catch exception step, it's just up here. If I add a catch exception, it's just a step. It will say, hey, anytime any step has an exception, we want to send out this information, kind of like the log information related to what happened, when it happened, and the error message that we got. So if we have something like a multiply step, and we're trying to multiply, or no, not multiply. Multiply, I can't, there's no real way to do that. If we want to divide, and we say, hey, we want to divide what? We want to divide 0 by 0, right? If we put a catch exception step, we can then perform tasks. And notice how this is like a new output. So anytime you go to a step and an exception happens, it will kind of bounce over saying, hey, there was an exception and go down this path. So you can use a log step to store that data in a log if you want to, right? And you can create that log saying, hey, I want to have just the message and the step name and the time, all that kind of stuff, flow data, let's go with time. So at a certain time, I don't know, at a certain time, a certain thing happened on this step, the message, what step and what it was. But for just demonstrative purposes, I'm going to just do the show pop up for this here and say constant. There was an exception. And then the message, I'll select from flow and I'll take that exception message and drag this over here to my end step. So now when I save and debug this, ideally we should get a pop-up that shows you something along the lines of, hey, there was an error. We came to here. There's an exception because you can't divide 0 by 0. So it automatically jumped over this catch exception step and did these things. So again, that's like a worthwhile thing you can kind of code in to maybe contact a system administrator or to run additional steps to maybe try and resolve the issues. But this catch exception is almost like adding an exception path to every step in your flow and having them start right here. So rather than having this huge web of exception paths, right? And I can't even, it won't even let me. If I add an outcome path for exception, I can't even, like, there is no ability to snap that to that. Like, that's kind of a, if you, it's as if you added an exception path to every single step and sent it back to that process. But that's kind of a worthwhile thing that might help you out when you're building is setting up these catch exceptions, showing a pop up. And again, let's run it and see what that error message said. So there was an exception, right? Error running step divide in flow unit test exception invoking method divide on class number of steps. So um, again, it just gives you information saying, hey, there was a problem. We could say pop-up location center. Let's try this, right? There it is. There was an exception, the header, the title I made, and then here's the information associated with it. It's not full, but you could really build this out with a lot more information If you wanted to, you can do like a merge plain text and go, hey, I want all this stuff now. And it's going to be a huge and ugly with no spaces between them, but I'm just showing you that you can really add a ton of stuff here. I can just click on random things here as we go. Again, that's going to be ugly, but just to show, right? It's super ugly, but conceptually, like I said, you can kind of get the data that you might want um, about why something wasn't working. Um, but it's just, catching exceptions is a worthwhile thing to kind of talk about as well. All right. Cool, cool, cool. Anything else? Anybody else? Again, feel free if you want to give me some guidance. If not, I can kind of keep poking around. Feel free to. Oh, I know a worthwhile one for the folks here that's just here to learn. This is helpful. Let's say you got a huge project. What do I got that's big? This isn't huge, but I think it's got something in it that's relatively large. No, I don't. Nope, I don't have anything in. Oh, there's one flow. Right. Okay, here you go. And I even did it. Look, I even did some of this and I'm about to show you. Perfect, perfect, perfect. You might find yourself in a position where you're like, I have this huge flow and I've got all this information floating through it. And I get numb to looking at all these blue squares with like generic descriptions about what's happening. Two worthwhile things I think, seem kind of obvious, but you might not know they exist. Adding labels to things, just adding a medium label saying like, this is where we are calculating the date or whatever, right? You say, okay, there's that, as well as important steps or things like that. You can go under step information and change some of the colors of these so you're not drowned out in a sea of blue. You could say, okay, hey, I want to this one, whatever the instance is, and you can organize like steps. Like, oh, I want all of my create data steps. Can I do more than one at a time? I want all my create data steps to be this purple. Nope, I can only do one at a time. But I want all my create data steps to be this purple color. So you're not just drowning in a sea of blue icons at times because it can definitely feel that way. Another cool part of that is interesting is say you had an assignment, right? So we add a task somewhere, right? This is a task that needs to be done. This is a task that needs to be done. We're just going to put a button on it and a checkbox saying we did the task. Obviously, this is a relatively random. I'm not really trying to show you how to make a form here. I wish I gladly will if someone wants, but now that I've added a button, I can go here. Another thing that could be helpful is it's going to a certain person and you want to keep yourself organized visually. Under step information, you can actually change that shape settings as well as the actual icon. So you can say has an image and I can go, okay, what is my image? I'm going to grab it from a file and I'm going to go to my downloads. And I think I've got some random pictures here. Do I have this thing? Yeah, let's go. Maybe not. It's a GIMP file. Yeah, nice. So now this assignment I know is assigned to Snoopy, right? I put a little icon on there saying, hey, so if you have like LinkedIn screenshots, hey, this is going to Steve. You can put a little picture of Steve on there. You might want to be careful. It kind of does bloat your system a little bit by just adding a ton of images and changing colors. But if if you know that, um, if it keeps you organized, there ain't no shame in adding some of that stuff so that we know who is going who, what, when, where, and why. And again, you can also use the repository of shapes that we have on our machine. So you don't have to you can kind of you can put plumbing elements, right? Why would you want this? We don't know. Plumber. We'll make him this ugly shade of green. His eyes don't change color. Why? Who knows? But you'll notice now we've got that plumber up there. And just things to keep yourself organized. It seems small, but when you get to these huge flows, it's nice to kind of keep some stuff in there to keep you organized. as well as the info tab over here. People always forget, but you can add tags to things to find things more easily. You can add a description here that has information as well as images, text links, and stuff like that. So if you know you're working against a requirements document, hey, these are my requirements, you can kind of keep all that stuff consolidated up over there. That can be kind of helpful for you too, again. So we know Snoopy's doing this thing. We know these two tasks are similar, and we know these three tasks are different based on the color scheme. And there's just, I know it's tiny and not super helpful, but potentially this can be helpful for you. I'll save this. Why not? I like the look of it. All right, that's 30 minutes. I'll gladly, like I said, if anyone's got any questions, I will gladly take some guidance and I'll show you what's applicable to you. But if not, I'll do maybe one more small demonstration of something and we'll start to work our way out here. It's 30 minutes. This is as long as an episode of The Office, which is more entertaining than this, I'm sure. So um, let's go back to lunch and learn from a previous date. We've kind of covered a lot of ground here, but oh, here we go. Unit tests. Here's another helpful one for you. So let's say hypothetically, you are running a project and you are testing and building out. Unit test is another thing that can be kind of elusive, but I'll kind of show you how this can be helpful. First number as an integer, second number also as an integer. I'm adding these as inputs so that I can map them into that divide step. So now that I've made those, I can select from flow, and we're trying to divide the first number by the second number, right, as inputs. Now, when I go to debug, because I added these inputs, you're given the option for these unit tests, right? So I'm going to make a new unit test, and I'm going to call this first number 10, second number 5. And you can add rules to say, hey, if the output of that divide, sorry, I got rid of the zoom window, is equal to, I think I did what, 10 divided by 5 maybe? Is it 2? Yeah, I think so. It'll pass out as positive. And with setting up these rules up here, you can still run, like if I chose to save this, 10 divided by 5, it saves over here. You can run the flows with that built-in information of 5 divided by 10 was 0.5. So you'll notice I got it backwards, wasn't paying attention, but you'll notice when I debug and I hit this, oh, I ran the wrong test, apologies. I debug and I hit 10 divided by 5 and run it. It's saying that rule returned as false. So you can like have built-in checks to say, hey, something's not right here. Like we're not right here. But if I change that and say, oh, 0.5 equals 2, let's change that unit test. 10 divided by 5? Yeah. And change this to, it was 5 divided by 2, so we should have changed this to what? 0.2? I already forgot. 5 divided by 10 would be
0.5.
0.5. Thank you. Jeez. We need some math majors in here. Thank you, Jeremy. I'm kind of all over the place today. Yeah. So now when I run this thing, right? Boom. We're getting true. So it's another just check, built in just to keep yourself checking along the way. And you can map this in with a ton of data, and just run a number of tests. And a cool thing about version 9, while we're talking about unit tests, is it does keep a log here. Let me make sure I can find it. On project, what are we on? Lunch and Learn, I believe. Oh, I just saw it. It keeps all your unit tests here. So if I wanted to, I can run all of these unit tests at the same time. And there was an exception, but they're all passing out because I didn't put rules in for these other two. But you could say, hey, I want to run them all at the same time. And again, this is that show pop-up step because it's running that flow as well, that 0 by 0 error. But, this can just be helpful in terms of kind of keeping yourself able to test efficiently and effectively across the health of your project in totality, as well as the health of your flow, as it is isolated using unit tests within flows. So I'll make one here that fails just so we can do that. And then I'll probably call it done unless someone's got a help here. So I'm going to copy this 10 divided by 5, and I'm going to call it 10 divided by 5 failed. And I'm going to edit this and change this 0.5 back to the way I thought it would be, which would have been 2, I think. Saying, all right, save that, save this, save that, save this. Now I've got 10 divided by 5 failed because I know I set up that rule to fail. At least I hope I did. So now when I go back here and go, okay, my unit tests on number 5, I have 4 now. I can run all. And you'll notice here that 10 divided by 5 failed because 10 divided by, or 5 divided by 10 does not equal 2. Yeah, that's right. So that's a lot of information. We talked about events. We talked about files. We talked about unit tests. We talked about customizing some of the UI within the flow to keep yourself organized, labels, fetching data. I guess we didn't talk about fetching data, but we talked about fetching data off of your machine by using that list files. But unless anyone has anything else, which I will gladly take, we'll probably work our way towards calling it. We did about 40 minutes here of learning, which again is longer than a sitcom and less entertaining. So any final questions for me before I kind of work our way out? Well, I went pretty quick, so this will be on YouTube here in a couple minutes. As well, feel free to reach out to training@decisions.com if you have training inquiries, or if you just have general support questions, like, hey, within my project, I'm having issues, it's not related to training, go to email support@decisions.com. But if you're in training and you're trying to do something related to training or asking if we have training materials based on something like process mining, or you want training materials based on, UI or rules engines or something like that, we can maybe give you some training, get you enrolled at training@decisions.com. But if you have general support questions, support@decisions.com. We have people here all the time here to help you. So thank you very much. I appreciate you just being here to listen. So, and helping with the math there, Jeremy. But if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you. No, thank you, Jason. Thank you for listening, man. I appreciate everybody. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you next week.